Hey, and welcome to Chasing the Joneses. While the world is changing, some things never change. You still need to work hard and take a few risks every now and then to achieve anything decent. But what if wealth in the future looks different? With so much uncertainty, how can we have the wealthy life today and tomorrow? In this series, I'll share views and strategies that everyday people use to build wealth. And the good news is, it doesn't come from a book. It comes from real life. Once your money thing is sorted out, on the way to chasing what you think success is, you might just learn how to surge ahead. So, if you're ready, let's go. Hey, welcome to this series where I'm just going to explore everything to do with what is going to be affecting interest rates this year in 2024. It's not something that I think you need to focus too much on, the whole external wide world of things that can happen that you can't control. But at the moment, due to the frequency and the magnitude of some of the things that are going on in the world, it certainly makes sense that you can be strategic with some of your investments. And that's how I want to frame talking about your mortgage rate. And for those especially that already have a mortgage and they're thinking about refixing the interest rate, it's really important to know that you can kind of adopt two strategies. The first strategy is what I would call a passive strategy, where you do a repeatable set of actions no matter what the environment is looking like outside. The property market might be booming, it might be in a bust, it might be going sideways, there might be a volcano in your road or something like really random that happens, and everything's thrown out the window in terms of what happens next. But the passive strategy just does the same thing, no matter what. For example, you fix your mortgage rate for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, you just keep on doing that, 2 plus 2 plus 2. The other idea would be that you divide it into equal portions and you fix a little bit across each period of time. Often this is known as interest rate averaging, and it's a passive strategy because it's automated. You just do the exact same thing. You always fix the one that's about to expire for 5 years, and you create this rolling thing of fixed rate expiry goodness, which averages out the interest rates over time. And you could do something like a 2 and a 4 year split fixed rate, and at the end of the first 2 year fixed rate expiry, you just fix it for 4 years, and you have this kind of nice separated stance where it's 2 offset by a further 2 on the other side. So it kind of gives you a really good simple mathematical way, I guess. Not really even mathematical, is it? It just gives you a really good, simple framework for you to know what you're going to do without having to worry about what's happening outside world. So that's kind of what I would call the passive strategies, or some of the passive strategies that you can employ. And the type of approach that I would recommend to my clients is one where you consider the micro first and then the macro. You consider what's happening in your world over the next little while. Are you going to be going overseas for a year? Are you going to be getting a massive promotion? Are you going to be taking some time off because maybe you've had a child, something like that? Well, one of the nastiest things you could ever do with a fixed rate mortgage is fix it for a period of time which is too long for what's happening in your world. For example, at 2 years, you might want to go overseas and you might want to sell your own home. Well, you wouldn't want to be fixing your mortgage for 5 years knowing that in 2 years there was a significant change happening in your life. And refixing the interest rate in your mortgage is pretty much the same thing as choosing which ETF to invest in for what period of time. You're trying to make a good decision based on the things that you know is going to happen in your world, and then you pivot towards looking at the outside world. So micro first, then the macro. And when I approach this with people, I kind of make it clear that, hey, and normally thinking about where we're at in some sort of cycle and trying to read the tea leaves, if you like, to predict where interest rates are going to go, that's not really how you want to approach it every time, because you're not necessarily trying to outsmart the system and get the cheapest possible deal for life. Yeah, that would be good, and hopefully that is what happens. But the primary objective is actually to manage your risk. What is the risk that your mortgage payments may get really out of whack really fast, catch you off guard, and you'll be forced into selling your property? That's kind of like the bad event that we want to avoid, right? And so anything that you can do to minimize that risk is what you should be thinking about front and center when you're refixing your mortgage. So now that we've kind of got that out of the way, I want to share with you some of the things that I've been thinking a lot about. It's kind of like, it's hard when you have to unlearn stuff and then relearn other perspectives and then apply it to an area that you've looked at before through a different lens. I don't know if that makes sense, But when I consider how the big wide world works, what I can understand of it, and when I think about how the global economy works, I have to kind of unlearn the things that I learned when I was doing my study and actually try to assemble the different perspectives and points of view and even different schools of thought that could describe it in an even better way. And so you kind of get this thing after a while where you can piece together your own worldview based on little snippets of what you might be able to understand. So you get this kind of patchwork setup of an understanding of how the world works. But the problem happens when you start to use reference points connected to the types of economics we all know and love today, which is a form of Keynesian economics. And that's kind of all about how you can stimulate the economy by creating consumption within the economy. In other words, give everybody a loaded gun and eventually they'll use it. It's about engineering monetary policy to try to control the economy. Consider it like this. There's two things. Interest rates are either going to stay high and go even higher and maybe even stay there for a lot longer, or interest rates are actually going to fall and they're probably going to fall quite quick. Yes, things could just go sideways for a while, but I kind of doubt it. I think things either break in a really bad way or they continue in a really good way. And that's what's so exciting about this environment that we're in right now. We just don't know which way things will go. Why interest rates are so important? Well, because pretty much everything that we do is a function of the cost of money. When we're involved and plugged into an economy that is built on credit creation, then you can do really well if you can understand how basically the pyramid structure works. Now, over the next few episodes or so, I'm not sure how many of these I'll put out there. I'm basically just sharing some of the thoughts that I've been unpacking recently on LinkedIn. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I would love you to add your perspective, challenge what I'm saying. I don't care if I'm wrong. I don't want to be right because I'm still learning. So if you want to learn with me and challenge my ideas or suggest some other ideas, that's probably the best place to do it because, a podcast is kind of a one-way conversation. Check out some of these thoughts every single day for the next 28 days. I won't share all of them on the podcast, but just a few of them anyway. So today I want to talk about opportunity costs and trade-offs, specifically as it applies to the government. So this whole subject here is really about which influence will that be on interest rates. Will they cause interest rates to go higher? Will they cause interest rates to go lower? And if so, by how much and within what time frame? That's kind of what I'm trying to unpack here a little bit. So when we think about opportunity costs and trade-offs for government in particular, we have to consider the lifestyle and financial trade-off that we have as individuals. We all want to grow the passive income, but not really when it comes at the cost of right now. We know that we probably have to sacrifice some of the fun and the enjoyment of right now if we're going to have a better time tomorrow. And it's really easy to think linearly here, thinking that, hey, if you have a coffee today, you won't be able to have a coffee when you're 70. But it's not quite like that, of course, because there's compounding returns. So when we think about opportunity costs in the personal finance sense, the cost of us knowing that we have more than enough to get through our retirement and we can finally start enjoying our life on our terms, the cost of that is sacrificing some of the funner things that you could do today. When I talk with people, quite often it's about getting both of these things and trying to find the magic formula where you can achieve both your lifestyle objectives and your financial objectives. But for the most part, you can't. You kind of have to have this trade-off. Not always, and that's the fun part, but most of the time, there has to be this trade-off. You can't have a better future without sacrificing a little bit today. The good news is you don't have to sacrifice that much today to get a much better tomorrow, and that's why we invest, right? So the trick is to optimize over both time zones of today and tomorrow. They're all ready, they're not yet. The government's the same. They have a choice. Do they optimize for long-term economic growth, or do they address the social needs of today? Do they give the masses what they want and just tax the rich, or just borrow from our future at really cheap rates? Or do they deliver what we actually need using a proven methodology, not just theory, but something that's already worked in the past? Do we just go through the hard yards with a solid plan and get stuff sorted? We all know what we should do, but what we should do and what we vote for are often two different things. A government cannot improve today without simultaneously harming tomorrow. That's the thing we always forget. Would you agree with this, though? And I guess the whole point of it is that if our governments are going to be forced to borrow more when there's nothing left to tax, what impact does that have to interest rates? Because if they're going to be borrowing a lot more, the interest rates for you and I might have to rise a lot more. So the everyday investor indirectly pays for what the government is doing today by a magnitude which is much greater than the benefit that we receive today. So that's just kind of like a little bit of one of the angles that I'm thinking about right now. Due primarily to war, if there needs to be a quick shift away from the fun part of production that the economy can produce to the necessary stuff that the economy needs to produce during a time of war, then ultimately we're going to pay for it because we need to redirect where our focus goes. And using the interest rate mechanism could be one of them. So that's one of the reasons why I'm quite interested in how war is progressing at the moment overseas, because I see that that could be one major outlier. And it's still not necessarily clear what that would do with interest rates and over what time frame. This is the problem. So if we're choosing how long to fix our mortgage for, we really have to think carefully around when this negative event might happen, what influence or what directional influence will that have on interest rates, and to what magnitude. Those are the three things that you always need to keep front and center. And so if you are a spreadsheety type of person, you might want to build some sort of formula or some sort of algorithm that kind of can work this thing out in terms of giving a strong forecast on where interest rates are going. If you want to do that, I'd love to see a copy of it. But that's pretty much it for this one. I just wanted to talk about trade-offs and opportunity costs at a personal level and at a government level, just to get a feel for what impact that might have over interest rates. I still don't know what it means yet, but if war does progress, it kind of seems on balance appropriate that interest rates will probably be forced higher. Over what time frame? Well, that event might be between, say, 1 to 3 years where we reach some sort of peak in whatever that situation is. And to what magnitude? Well, that's where I'm really, really lost, because it could just be a minor blip in terms of how it affects financial markets, or it could be a significant black swan event. And unfortunately, that would probably come with a severe weakening of the global economy and the financial system. So that would be rather concerning. All right. Well, that's it for this episode. Hope you found that useful. It wasn't too complicated. Obviously, this wasn't scripted, so I kind of just went for a long walk in the woods there. Hope you stayed with me okay, and it was all right. We'll catch you in the next one.